Welcome to the Lighthouse sessions. I'm really excited today. I have my new friend, Charley Johnson, here with me. And Charley is a Chief Consciousness Officer. Charley, why don't you introduce yourself and tell my audience a little bit about what you do exactly?
Born and raised in Utah. Do you want the 5-10 minute breakdown of the whole existence, or do you want to just go straight into the Chief Consciousness Officer?
Let's go straight into what you're doing today.
Okay. What's going on now is the Chief Consciousness Officer. You remember 30 years ago when technology took over business and all the executives knew what they needed. Everyone knew everything was going to go online. Everyone knew technology was going to be a big deal, but no one within the company knew how to create a website, put a URL up, and no one knew how to code. So they looked over to the corner, all the people that they weren't paying attention to, all the weird people, and said, I think we need to hire them. So the Chief Technology Officer became a huge staple. Now it doesn't matter, small, medium, or large companies. The CTO is usually one of the first people hired within an organization, a startup, it doesn't matter. Consciousness is becoming the central focus of humanity. It's always been the central focus, just we've not been aware of it. No one's been paying attention to it. This year, massive shifts have been happening. Consciousness has been raising. The timelines have been dissolving. Everyone can feel that change, especially as you and I speak right now. All the stuff that's happened in the last probably the last week, all the protests, the things going on in the Middle East. This is a symptom, a sign of what's going on with consciousness. Everything's raising. Companies, executives, employees are going to want to understand what consciousness is. They're going to want someone on staff who understands it very clearly at a very high level and knows how to bring everyone into the fold. What we've done in the past, for the last 15, 20 years, we've done conscious leadership, conscious management, conscious capitalism with, what's his name, John Mackey, I think it is, with Whole Foods, right? And that has sparked multiple companies, tens of thousands of conscious coaches. And they're doing incredible work. They're incredible people, very intelligent. My only question is, how does the world look? How does business look? We've never been so divided and conflicted. We need a full-time staff member. We need someone on staff full-time, not just working with the executives, but working with every level of the company. So that's where this position came about.
I love that. Now let's talk about consciousness as you see it, because I think we all have definitions for words until somebody else tells us what theirs is, and then it gives us some insight. So what do you view a chief consciousness officer as doing, and why are they critical today? What are they changing in an organization?
Consciousness, let's just start there.
Yeah.
The simplest way, a lot of science is coming out, a lot of individuals like Hoffman and Bernardo Kastrup and those guys are starting to talk about it at a very high level, right? It's like the guys they bring on 60 Minutes and they're talking about astrophysics, they're talking about quantum entanglement, and that just confuses the hell out of most people. So the simplest way to look at consciousness is the fish analogy. A wise fish swimming through the ocean swims by two young fish and says, hey boys, how's the water? The two young fish look at each other and say, what's water? So as you and I are talking, as whenever this airs and your listeners are watching this, every one of them is swimming in consciousness. All we've paid attention to is this little middleman. This same mind that creates a problem can't save the problem, right? Yeah. This little middleman here is just causing all the chaos in the world. We got to go one step deeper. So when they say, what's consciousness? It is. We're just swimming in it. You and I are swimming in it. Everything physical and non-physical. So this position comes into an organization and expands consciousness. It expands awareness. It expands letting everyone at every level of the company understand that they have access to this vast resource. They've always had access. They've unknowingly severed their tie from it. They've only used the mind. They've only used other people's opinions, what they've read, what they've watched, what their boss told them, what their parents told them, what their teachers told them, right? And as a society, we always talk about knowledge is power, which is completely agree with. But NASA did a study where they followed a few thousand kids. At the ages of 4 and 5, 98% were considered genius. By the time those kids were adults, it was less than 2%. So that impacts all 8 billion people, right? So we've got this vast resource of everything we've ever wanted, all the new questions, all the different answers, all the different solutions that I'm assuming every executive in this world wants to have access to. but we've shrunk ourselves down. We're Republican or Democrat, we're Catholic or atheist. This is right. That's my moral code. This, that's what my parents told me. This is what I learned from my professor. And we shrink it down to this tiny little box.
Yeah.
We have
Almost
access to this.
thimble size, but
Oh, tiny. This position at least brings awareness to that. This position creates less division and conflict, right? We've never had more books on happiness. We've never been so unhappy. Never had more coaches and consultants working on burnout and retention rates. Both have never been worse.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Right?
Yeah.
What am I missing? Are we just going to continuously do this because it creates so much revenue and companies are so hungry for it, but just because we're going to go in and it's not really moving the needle, we're just going to keep doing it?
Yeah.
Like I've always had an issue with that, and we need someone on staff full time. This person's there 365 days a year. It's not 4 weeks with the executives and then wondering what the hell the other 11 months are. It's not just working with the executives and then hoping that it dribbles down to the employees. That's obviously not working. We need someone on staff who works with everyone at all times.
Well, and if I may add my 2 cents, I've noticed we've never had more psychiatrists, psychologists, self-help gurus, and yet we've never had more confusion. And
yes,
it seems like mental health is becoming mental illness at an alarming rate. So, so what would a chief consciousness officer be doing? Because I'm guessing it's not as tangible as some people might think, but it's not as intangible either.
Most would look at consciousness and think of this position and think wellness programs, right? Again, to my point, the last 20 years, we've had yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, mindfulness, all of that, right? And it's everyone's heart's in the right place. How does it look?
Yeah.
Right. Again, never more divided and conflicted. This position brings in the understanding of these conversations you and I are having. This position with the division and conflict between executives and employees, or maybe people of the same team, one's Republican, one's Democrat, one's Catholic, one's atheist, bringing to their attention the question of what's better, heads or tails of the coin. Yeah. Logically, any intelligent human would say they're the same. Yeah, no shit. So why are we continuously dividing each other with beliefs, with ideals, with political, right? This position starts to take everyone's awareness from this very, like you said, thimble-like, very small, expansive perception and starts to expand it. Yeah. When the CEO is looking for new structure, new strategy, new industries, how do I fix this? All their solutions are in this tiny little thimble, right? We expand this. They have different questions asked. They have different answers. They have different solutions. Marketing, HR starts hiring differently. Marketing's more creative. Sales starts looking at sales differently. The CFO, everyone within the company starts to expand their awareness. This person is specifically on staff in meetings, one-on-ones, wandering around, hanging at the watering hole, talking to customer service, talking to middle management, talking to manufacturing, just to bring that energy to expand everyone's awareness, to expand everyone's consciousness so they all have access to different questions, to different answers, right? Yeah. Because again, when you talk about the tangible and the intangible, we have a lot of stuff that we can write down and talk about tangible when conscious leadership comes in. We talk about the ROI. Right, we've all got these numbers. It's kind of like with VCs and investments. We've got all these decks of what sales are going to be, what this company's going to do, and everyone knows that 8 to 9 out of 10 of those companies are going to fail miserably. But we keep investing in them. We keep investing in conscious leadership. We keep doing the same shit over and over and over and over again. To your point, we've never had more therapists. We've never had more self-help. Why do we just keep going down that same path? Right. Yeah. This individual has a deeper understanding of just that. It's not going to be comfortable, but would we rather start to get better results in the future that we all want to leave better for our children and for our company and for our other future employees? Or do we want to just keep doing the same shit, getting frustrated, let the anxiety build? Yep. This person on staff, once people start to really understand the neutrality of this individual, that's a big point too. Right? Very polarized industry, polarized world, polarized politics, polarized religion. Having someone in the middle who can bridge that gap between the two worlds. When this kicks in, it could take a week, could take a month within an organization. This individual, this position will not have enough time in the day.
Well, if I may, I think we tend to focus on the microscope. We're looking at that teeny tiny slice of something when sometimes we need a telescope. And I think that's what I'm hearing is when you're looking at consciousness and awareness, it's not the or conversation. You're not saying, is it this or that, heads or tails. You're looking at maybe the coin is not the point. Maybe it's something outside of the coin. Maybe it's neither head nor tails, or sometimes it's both, right?
It's always both. Republicans and Democrats exist. Catholics and atheists exist. Our mind, we've got to be, this is the other thing this position does. The mind, the only tool we've ever used is an either or tool. We only know up or down, right or wrong, Catholic or atheist, Republican or Democrat, heads or tails. Both exist. It's both.
Yeah.
So it's the microscope and the telescope.
Yeah.
Right? It's the profit and the purpose. It's bringing the individual to an understanding that since the beginning of humanity, we've chosen sides. It's this or that. Are you for me or are you against me? Right? This is all childish conversations that everyone in an intimate conversation like this, I completely agree with. I know this, I care about my kids. You're right, Charlie. You're right, Charlie. Okay, then why does the world look the way it looks? Why, when we get into a group setting, we get into a meeting, we get with our boss, we get with our teachers, we get with the people around us, we get into politics, whatever's going on in the world, we completely lose our minds and completely forget that it's not an either or. We force ourselves to choose a side to feel safe with, this is our group, this is not, these people are against us. We've done this since the beginning of humanity. Right? To me, this is such a surface level conversation, but it is a deeper conversation that's impacting everything every human, all 8 billion people do on this planet. It impacts politics, it impacts religion, but it impacts business. Right? And instead of working with the executives hoping it dribbles down, we need to work with all the employees within an organization. Everyone needs a job. Yeah. Everyone's at business. Everyone spends more time with the people that they probably work with than they do their family. So this is where we need consciousness. This is where we need it. And it's not spiritual. This is a very tactical understanding that we can bring to religious people, that we can bring to an atheist, that we can bring to a Republican, we bring to a Democrat, to help them understand what this vast resource is. Once they understand that and they expand their awareness, division and conflict minimizes, burnout minimizes, retention rates go up. Everything that all these coaches and consultants are working on that is not working, you start to bring it down one level deeper, the consciousness, give access to everyone in the company what this means, the fish and water shit. Yeah. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. But everyone's going to watch this and say, it's kind of vague. It's not really, it's not tangible. Consciousness, is it spiritual? Do we need to go meditate? No, this is not a part of the wellness program. I'm not telling everyone, listen to this passion. There's no talk of meditation. There's no talk of mindfulness. We've done that for 20 years. It's not working. Yeah. This is an understanding at the individual level that they have access to consciousness. They are consciousness. Knowledge is structured in consciousness. They have access to everything they've ever wanted. And every time we go out to our boss, to a book, to a podcast, to a lecture, that's someone else's third-party opinion. We have access to that same knowledge. We can funnel that knowledge through our own consciousness and what feels best for us. So when we get more authentic from the executives and the employees, you're going to start to be less divided and less conflicted. You're going to trust each other more. There's a whole thing here, but it's just different. It's right. It's different. Maybe it scares people. Maybe they don't understand it. But this position, day in and a day out, if the company will just take a chance on it, they will see an impact like they've never seen before, ever.
I love that. And I think one of the things I hear a lot, I work with a lot of for-profits, but I also deal with some nonprofits. And it fascinates me when I talk to a nonprofit and they say you can either make money or you can do good. Mm-hmm. And yet when I talk to philanthropists, they say I make money so I can do more good. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, but literally I'm going to boil our entire conversation down to the difference between the word or and the word and. Because if you're open to consciousness, and that's, I play a little with improv, but for me, it's all about, and, I see my point of view and I see yours. Mm-hmm. When you start to think in ands, your brain is a richer soil for opportunity.
Nothing else to add to that, man. That's perfect. Truly, there's no reason to speak about something when it's been said perfectly. Nothing to add. That's perfect.
Well, thank you. So let's talk about your journey. So now we'll get into a little bit about what I love about entrepreneurs is they'll find something that frustrates them, and somehow they'll turn it into a business. And it's so. What was the moment where you realized the world needs to get into this and start cultivating more chief consciousness officers?
I have a business background. I have a nonprofit background. I've owned businesses, but I've also ran the Pay It Forward Foundation, the famous one with the book and the movie. But my time with my teacher, the 10 years with him, he had me read everything humanly possible, from religious books to normal book, everything, not to cram my mind full of knowledge that was already overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
But to have me come to the point to realize myself, holy shit, it's all the same. It's all coming from the same source.
Yeah.
We're killing each other over it. We have two Harvard grad 170 IQ individuals that are at each other's throats because one's Republican, one's Democrat. Like, this is incredibly childish. Like, and it took me a while because I'm like, okay, I'm an individual from Utah, no religious background, no spiritual understanding. I've got access to this incredible teacher that people would leave their families for. I'm coming to this realization. The whole world's doing this. We've been doing this since the beginning of humanity. There's no way what I'm thinking is right. No way. Look at the division and conflict on this planet. My God's better than your God. I'm Republican. You're ruining the world, Democrats. Oh, you think the same about me? Huh. So again, we're going to keep doing this time and time and time and time and time again. We're going to do these podcasts. We're going to write books about happiness. We're going to have coaches and consultants, and we're going to do the business thing, and the capitalism and spirituality is going to care. We're going to continue to do this. Saw. Every side's going to think they're right, and the other side is wrong. And at some point, one side's going to win. The other side's going to be okay with that. We're just going to go off in this utopic future. So he brought me to that realization on my own. He allowed me to figure that out. That's what consciousness does. It's not me telling anyone what to do, changing their beliefs, having them read certain books. It's just bringing their awareness to they have access to it. Yeah. So I helped a few people, hundreds, to the spiritual side of things, but I realized that's such a small slice of the pie. And I always had in the back of my mind that we need to have like a critical mass. We need to figure out some way for the critical mass at every level of the individual, every level of business, every level of whatever it is, individual IQ, consciousness level, age. There's got to be something that can massively shift these individuals, because only the select few are getting access to this information. Everyone thinks it's secret or hidden. It's not. So where could we bring this in? It's always going to be business. It's always going to be corporate. And the idea of so many people leaving business behind and becoming spiritual and thinking capitalism and money's for the birds led me down this path even more, because I saw the division between religion and spirituality. I saw the division between capitalism and people leaving it behind, thinking they want to tear it down as if it's evil. It's not evil. Structure's not evil. Companies aren't evil. Religion's not evil. Nonprofits aren't evil. None of this shit's evil. It's the human beings involved that have a lower sense of clarity, that have a perception that something's wrong, something's off. I'm right, you're wrong. This is my moral code. Yours are this constant division. So I wanted to bring this into business. And in America, you've got to have chief blank officer. Yeah. So 3 months ago when that came about, that's when all the doors open. That's when we've done 60 podcasts in the last 6 weeks. Businesses, people hiring, other people wanting to be CCOs.
And Charley, if I may, you're on this podcast because I loved your fish picture.
That's fine with me. I don't care how we get this message out, and I don't mind. And I people say, well, what kind of company wants a CCO? They always think of Silicon Valley. They think of fringe. They think of tech. No, if it's an oil company, we'll Trojan horse it in. If it's a company people don't really care for, we'll Trojan horse it in. Consciousness has access. Consciousness is everything. Everyone has access to it. And if we really want to shift things, if we think by tearing it down, it's going to shift anything, you're just going to create more division and conflict. We need resources and access to a vast resource that creates less division and conflict. And us humans at the level of the mind don't know how to do that. Just look at the world. Yeah. All the happiness, all the coaches, all the consultants, all the consciousness, or conscious this, conscious that. We've more divided and conflicted than ever.
Well, and it's fascinating that you and I are having this conversation today, because yesterday, one of my longtime mentors that I've followed in business just announced I'm leaving business. I'm selling my coaching, and I am going to be ordained as a monk, and I'm moving somewhere on the globe. I don't know where it is. And literally, this person felt that that was the only way they could continue their spiritual journey. And I can't help but wonder, and again, I'm not here to judge someone else's choices, but how much more impact could this person have if they were, instead of being the CEO, they switched over to being the chief consciousness officer?
So that's like kind of to your point, not an or, it's an and, right? And
Yeah.
with this individual, there's a deep calling for them to do that, or they wouldn't have done it. I mean, that's a massive shift, right?
Yeah.
I will tell you though, with the teacher I had access to, the people I've been around, the things I've seen, most, and it could be this lifetime or the next, most will do at some point what he's doing, and they'll find a teacher that will enlighten them. And you know what that teacher's going to tell them to do next?
Each other's.
Go back, get married, have kids.
Yeah.
There are very few cave dwellers on this planet that sit in a cave, go become a monk, and meditate the rest of their life. That's perfectly fine. Those are powerful individuals. Most of us, 99.9% of us, are house dwellers. And house dwellers sometimes believe they need to leave the world behind, and they can. But the teacher, the cave dweller, the one who's going to bring it, who knows that individual's karma and their dharma, will say, great, you know, everything's an illusion. You know, all this bullshit, all these cliche things. I need you to go back and live life. So to that individual, that's what he needs to do. And that's perfectly fine. And I've seen that. I've crossed paths with thousands of those individuals. Money's for the birds. I need to leave everything behind. The only way I can become spiritual, everything is spiritual. When you were 2 years old, it was everything is spiritual. And we will always come to that realization because, again, I had 10 years with probably who this individual would kill to be around. People who cross paths with my teacher don't come back to the world because he's blown them open so much. But there was something in my karma to bring me back, to not remove this passion from me, to be talking to you, to bring this position, right? We need to bring consciousness to the masses. We need to take most people from elementary to junior high. If we really want to shift consciousness on this planet, that's how we do it. It needs to be known by 8 billion people, not just the select few, not the people who have access to selling their business and enough money to go become a monk, which is perfectly fine. But most of us are not going to do that. We need to talk to the most of us.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, you know, I'm an entrepreneur first and I'm spiritual second, and you know, really truly it's a close race, but I do look at scale, and I do look at how do we have the most impact, and I keep coming back to the most impact is going to be through being an entrepreneur, because and I love the idea. A friend of mine actually ran an organization for what he called enlightened entrepreneurs, and I find it fascinating. So I'm going to share something a guru told me and my reaction to it. But years ago, I was like, how do I help other people? And he said, work on yourself. And I'm like, that's stupid. What are you talking about? You know, I was so literal. I'm like, I don't understand. I want to help people. And he said, trust me, Jeff, work on yourself. And now as I've worked on myself, it's the aha moment, because when we're more aware, when we're more connected, I don't think in binary anymore. I think in very, you know, you're Republican, you're Democrat, so what? You know, what does that get in the way of? And I think a lot of people, but, you know, it's like they want that charge, you know, you have positive and negative. We're going to either be allies or enemies. And it's like, or we could just coexist. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I'll just share with you, Charlie, that by accident, I realized that people who bear the term or are willing to be on a show about visionary entrepreneurs are almost all spiritual, and yet none of them are overtly religious, because I think when you look at a lot of the religions, like you said, it's the same essential ingredients. It's just, you know, we've been trained that my religion's better than your religion, whereas with spirituality, it's my spirituality enhances yours and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true for most, but you can also agree that spirituality has become just as dogmatic and structured as religion has. So spirituality and religion has just become the heads and tails of the coin. This position is can have these can have this clarity with all conversations. That to me is where the neutrality and the power of this position comes in. They can talk to entrepreneurs, they can talk to CEOs, they can talk to individuals like you, they can talk to the coach, guru, the mentor of yours that's leaving the world behind to go become a monk.
Yeah.
This individual, this position has access to all information and can talk to anyone at any level at any time to help them understand their path, the neutrality, and remove the fear. Right?
Yeah.
Because the guy going becoming a monk, everyone's like, man, that's a peaceful man. No, that man, just like all of us, is usually driven by fear. There's a fear, like I have a fear of not becoming enlightened without selling shit and leaving the world behind. That's great. That's what you truly feel. That's perfectly fine. This position understands all of them, and they can talk to someone at every level, remove the fear. And to your point 10 minutes ago, the mental health crisis, we're really good at suppression.
Yeah.
Everything, when clarity happens, clarity doesn't just bring in the rainbows and the unicorns. Clarity brings in all the shit we didn't want to deal with as a kid or for the last 30 years. The mental health crisis doesn't mean something's wrong. It just shows everyone what they haven't dealt with, and they're having to deal with it right now.
Yeah.
That's all that is. It's completely chaotic. It's very fearful. It scares the shit out of people. I can understand that because after 30 years, the confidence, the different thoughts, the different opinions, I need to get a divorce. I need to change my job. I need purpose. I need this. I need this. And they just go nuts, right? I understand that, but that's all mental health is. So to your point with the therapists and the psychologists, that's a whole nother industry that we've never had more, yet we're really not moving the needle with the mental health crisis, because if the consciousness level of the therapist is lower than the patient, the therapist is going to tell them what to do, what they read in a book in college. And the person that has a higher consciousness is going to do that because they trust them. And it's actually going to lead to more chaos.
Yeah.
No one ever talks about that. And by God, if I were to ever say that to a true therapist, I would get my ass kicked. And that's perfectly fine. I don't have a PhD in that, but we're hiding behind intelligence. We're hiding behind degrees. We're hiding behind PhDs, and it continuously changes. And with change, the time right now that we're going through, change is happening in a day that used to take a year.
Yeah.
We're seeing shit happen in a week that used to take 10 years. There's so much sped up change right now that's happening, and this position can help with it.
I love it. Now, Charlie, I'm going to share something because I think you'll find it amusing. But I recently was officially diagnosed as ADHD, which I was not surprised. And I sat down with a psychiatrist, and she started quoting her textbook to me. And after about 5 minutes, I said, look, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm not here to be mean. I know exactly what it's like to live inside my head and the challenges and things. And I said, no offense, but of the two of us, I'm the most qualified to work on myself. You are not qualified because you don't understand my condition.
Holy hell, that's awesome.
And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you were so mean to her. And I'm like, no, I said it kindly. It was not a judgment. And at the end, she was like, you know what? You're right. There's nothing I can give you other than, you know, the tools I have are talk therapy and medication. And I said, I'm going to do introspection.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, oh my God, I wish everybody would do that and I'd be out of a job. And I was like, yes. So
that's what people are waking up to.
Yeah.
That's what people are waking up to. And in today's society, most would look at someone like you and say, that's not the right conversation. They have the PhD behind it. Who the hell do you think you are? Yeah. Right? That's no different than what I get. Like all these, there's companies, multi-billion-dollar companies here in my backyard with tens of thousands of conscious leaderships and management, and they've done great stuff. But I always continue to look at the world and look at business and how divided and conflicted we are. And I would be looked upon with their resources and their coaches and say, you're a complete idiot. Yeah. Why would we ever have a chief conscious? I've crossed paths with them. I'm connected with a lot of, they should be hiring chief consciousness officer. They actually should be calling me, and I should be meeting with them already and saying, yeah, let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's just take it a deeper level. Don't be threatened by this. Don't be the oil company that doesn't want to go buy a eco-friendly company. You have the resources. Why don't you do both?
Yeah.
Why are we so hell-bent? Why are conscious individuals still stuck in their ways? Why don't we expand it?
Yeah.
And I love that you had that conversation with her. That's great.
I get called a lot of things. I've been called a heretic. What's the word when you're against God? I've been told I'm that. And it's like, but I'm not questioning God. I'm accepting him as we believe God exists. And, I look at it from the perspective, we're finite beings trying to put our finite descriptions onto an infinite universe. How the hell do I know what God's like? Is God male or female? That's a wrong question.
No chance. The relative came from the absolute. The one created the two. The two cannot know the one. We in our tiny little existence, we are doing the best we can with a very small perception of understanding. And we put constructs on it. We have severe conditioning and bias with how we grew up, and it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. But just like an 8-year-old who believes in Santa, then by 10, they wonder if it's their parents. And then by 12, they know it's their parents. That's evolution.
Yeah.
That's evolution. And again, I'm not for God or against it. I'm not for Republican or Democrat. This is where people really, it's like I've had so many people listen to this, and then because they can't figure out if I'm for them or against them, they just turn and walk away.
And I think that's, if you look at evolution and, our basic instincts, we're conditioned, we're built for survival, not to optimize the human race. It's just how do we survive? And the fascinating thing, and just, it's fair to say I'm a convert, and, if Charley wants my support, he's got it. The reality is we need to look at what's possible versus how do we fight over what is. And I think that's, I see this in a lot of corporate, and for what it's worth, a friend of mine is very insightful, and he's been helping me. He believes that about less than 15-20% of the population are actually even thinking about consciousness, let alone talking about it. So a lot of,
probably a pretty high number too.
Yeah, probably a high number. And, unfortunately, he's got 2 PhDs. So he's always looking at, what can I prove? And how do you prove amongst 8 billion people who are looking at consciousness? But the reality is, I think a lot of people, and, I have this conversation with friends, colleagues, they're looking at employees and saying, why would that idiot do this? And my question is, have you talked to the person? So first of all, are they truly an idiot? And if so, why did you hire them? But the reality is you've labeled them that way because they disagree with you and they're not doing what you think. Exactly. But yet you haven't bothered to ask why they think the way they do. And I want your opinion on this, Charley, but my aha, so my sons are about to be off from school for the summer. And we're spending the summer talking about self-reflection. We're talking about meditation. We're talking about communication skills, because they're surrounded by kids. The buzzword today is dysregulated. And it's like, I can't help them help their classmates, but I can help them navigate their classmates. So I think that's my aha is, if you're not looking at consciousness, you're quietly accepting the status quo as the best path, which, again, we're seeing with riots and protests and war, probably not the best path.
It's not. But the greatest thing we've got going for us is when humans are left to their own devices, you see the world we create. Consciousness is forcing 8 billion people. And this year is massive, just by the timelines, by the people, the channels, all that. June is one of the most chaotic, as you can see by the facts of what the hell's going on in the world right now. July, we are recording this on June 18th. Watch what happens in July. Consciousness, the word. So to your buddy's point, the 15 to 20%, the world's going to start waking up to what that word is. Mark my words. Come July, we got a couple weeks. July is going to be one of the most eye-opening things humanity has ever experienced, ever. And that's where the chief consciousness officer came about, because you know as well as I do, everything's just channeled through us.
Yeah.
They're not our thoughts, right? So I'm a vessel, you're a vessel, people. July. That's why this chief consciousness officer came about. That's why you and I are talking. That's why there's been so many podcasts. That's why there's been so many people who have opened up to this. The doors have opened. July is an absolute massive shift for humanity, and they're going to wake up to what we're talking about, which is a beautiful thing.
I love that. And I have chills because our episode is scheduled to go live on July 10th. So
Perfect.
It'll be right in the moment of,
Perfect.
Now, I'm fascinated by this, but I do want to go into more practical for a moment.
Okay.
So it's all well and good. We say hire a chief consciousness officer. I think you're amazing, and I know you're the product of 30 years of introspection and work, and a decade with your guru. How does somebody, if somebody wants to hire a chief consciousness officer, how do they find them? That feels like it's going to be the challenge.
No, because I've crossed paths in the last 2 months with hundreds of people who have said, I finally can tell someone what I do. Right. When people would come to them, they would say, oh, I'm the jack of all trades. I'm the person that I'm an advisor. They pull me out of the closet when they need a decision made. Right. And people are like, I don't get that. Now that they can say I'm a chief consciousness officer, people, just because of how we're conditioned, the constructs, they're like, oh, okay. And then they can go into details of what that position is. On this July 10th, when this comes out, I'm sure you'll put my LinkedIn there so people can talk.
Yeah.
Contact me. We can talk about what the position is, what it's not. And we're also putting together, and I'm actually working with about a couple dozen people right now who want to be chief consciousness officers. So if they want the training, come talk to me. But we're going to put together a university type of program for business schools, a 10 to 12 month program where we can start to expand this. And I assume there's quite a few companies that have someone on staff right now who this would light them up like a Christmas tree, and we could help them understand what this position is. So if you're a company, you're watching this and you're looking for a chief consciousness officer, talk to me or hire me. That's fine. If you have someone on staff that you think would be great for this position, you kind of want to move them up, give them a promotion, or just someone that really understands it, we can start working with them and we can start expanding them, letting them know what this position is so they can continue within the company, and then they can expand into this role. Because again, every company has a CTO, and it took 20, 30 years. The chief consciousness officer is not going to take 20 or 30 years with the way things are speeding up. So contact me. I can help you with that. Hire me if you want to start to, even if it's by that month or whatever you want to do, just to see what this position would do. And if you have someone on staff, send them my way and we'll work with them.
Well, and my gut tells me that someone who hears this and sees this, they're either going to go, that's me, or they're going to go, oh, that's Bob down in accounting. Like they're going to know somebody. And I think that's where I live, is that state of knowing. And, when you told me, what you do, I was like, that sounds like what I do. It's just, and not to say I'm there, it sounds like something I'm evolving into. And, honestly, that's my goal with the podcast, is to raise people's consciousness and help others do better and do more. So
yes, beautiful.
I think, and honestly, I live in an interesting niche that I chose on purpose. My kind of community is that visionary founder who cares deeply about impact and what we're doing in the world. And, yes, we want profits and we want to have an impact. It's not, oh, I want impact, so sorry, profits, we're going to have to lay everybody off and shut down. I'll just share with you, I had a conversation with a billionaire. I love billionaires. They fascinate me. And almost all of them, they hustled to get away from pain. But then they started doing the work on themselves because they realized money didn't take away the pain. They had to do the work on themselves. And then at some point, their obsession, and Bill Gates is an example, it's all about my impact, my legacy. How do I help the world? And one billionaire actually said to me that billionaire philanthropy is infinitely more fun than poor person philanthropy. And I was like, damn, that sounds fascinating. It's I don't need proof. I'm going to believe him because he's like, a poor person's version of charity is the Girl Guides come and you buy a box of cookies. They get to keep the margin. That's nice. But he said, my version of philanthropy, I buy a cookie factory and I give the cookies to the kids and, they can sell them and they keep 100%.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, your version is more fun.
I agree.
Now,
that's incredible.
One of the challenges I have is this is an infinite conversation and we have to squeeze it into a time zone. Is there anything else I should have asked you that I haven't yet?
No, you asked what you were supposed to ask. We spoke about what we spoke about. July 10th, people will hear what they want to hear.
I love it.
No,
okay. Well, I will encourage everybody watching this, or if you've seen this, connect with Charley. He is just a genuine soul. And I say that with great respect, because a lot of people show up and they want to project an image. Charley, I can see you've done the work. So I want to thank you for being a fabulous guest on the show.
Yeah, man. Thank you for letting this conversation be heard. Appreciate it.